Hello and welcome back to High Desert Voices. This is your podcast host for now, Brie Castellini, and I am today joined by lovely local writer, poet, community organizer, Lisa Connors. Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here today.
We're really excited to talk to you because this is a kind of version of What You're Reading, where specifically Lisa wrote this really great article for the blog, link in the episode description if you haven't read it yet. But you wrote a really great blog about finding inspiration and using books to ignite your creativity. So we wanted you to come in and talk about it a little bit more, expand on it perhaps. But where I want to start is that these books have a very specific place in your day, right? Your daily schedule, as it were.
Yes, I usually have 4 books going at any one time.
Okay, so how do these 4 books break down in your day? I'm fascinated by this process, by the way.
So I start out every morning with a cup of hot tea and a book, a philosophy book.
Okay.
And I generally read 5 to 10 pages of the philosophy book, and then I journal to determine for myself what I think about what I just read.
Okay, great.
And then I read a book about writing, like about the creativity or about the process or about actual craft.
Sure. And so that's book 2 of the day. That's where the books that we're talking about today fit in your schedule.
Yes.
All right, book 3, when's that coming in?
That's my carry around and read as necessary during the day.
DMV weights.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And that's generally a book of essays.
Okay.
And then the last book is my before bed book, which is always fiction.
Okay. So when did this schedule come into place? I know that now we're just like, what are your reading habits? But I find this so fascinating. I do not have the attention span to do that. I have to read one book and be done with it. So yeah, when did this come into your life?
After my last deployment and when I retired, I was in a really bad place.
Sure.
And I started reading a book that I found just at random called Writing Down Your Soul.
Okay.
And it talked about reading and then journaling about what you read, reading for self-improvement and journaling about what you read. And so that's when I started that. And when and I would pick up self-help books and do that all the time. And when the pandemic hit, I couldn't... When the pandemic hit, I couldn't get any more self-help books. I couldn't get out, and I don't like to shop online for books.
Okay.
So I started going through my house, and my ex-husband had left all these philosophy books around. And so I started my study of philosophy during the pandemic.
Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, when better to get into philosophy than a global pandemic where you're stuck at home, right?
That's right.
A lot of time to think and think about thinking, I guess.
And there were a lot of books. The big mistake that I made was I didn't put them in order.
Sure.
So I just started reading random philosophers from random periods of time.
Okay.
And it didn't make as much sense to me as it could have.
Fair enough. Yeah, I definitely philosophy is so much about like the way that human beings think about things and like understanding the context in history and the chronology, I imagine, is part of that learning and practice. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I'm just fascinated and I think Lisa's really cool. So today we are specifically talking about 4 of the most recent books that you read during that second period where you're thinking about craft and creativity. So let's start with Dear Writer, Pep Talks and Practical Advice for the Creative Life by Maggie Smith.
This is brilliant. Maggie Smith is an amazing writer. She's a poet and an essayist.
Okay.
And then she came out with this book, which is for any writer. So, it's not just for poets. Don't think it's just for poets.
Sure.
This is what I call a gentle book.
Okay.
That's the way I classify it in my brain. It's something very easy to read. You can have a cup of tea and just read. The problem with this book is that it's so easy to read. You can just blow through it. And I hate to do that because I like to contemplate what I have read.
Sure.
So you have to force yourself to like just read a small section and then stop.
Sure. So what's the structure of this book? Would you consider it more creativity, more craft? Where does it fall?
This is not a craft book.
Okay.
This is a book more about broad topics like dealing with restlessness, dealing with emotion, and It's broken up into chapters. Each chapter starts with a letter from Maggie Smith to a writer, which is why it's called Dear Writer.
Okay.
And she talks about her choice to include this particular general topic in this book. And then it has 3 short essays that basically make her point.
Mm-hmm.
And then it finishes with a prompt.
Oh, fun. That almost seems like it would be a way to slow you down. It's like, oh, well, now I want to go do the prompt.
Right.
That's cool. Is there one that stands out to you that you remember, one chapter or prompt?
I would say restlessness. That one stands out to me. The letter in the beginning of the restlessness chapter starts, Dear Writer, restlessness probably makes you think about discomfort, unease, a prickling or needling feeling. It sounds less than appealing, but stay with me here. This is exactly what the artist needs. And because you're a creative person and because I trust we are kindred spirits, I trust that this idea energizes you. If restlessness sounded tedious or painful, then you wouldn't be a writer. This is work, and this is the joy.
Very cool. Okay. So why is this chapter speaking to you?
I think because I started writing because I felt like I didn't fit in the community and I had no voice.
Okay.
And so being able to write about those things that make you restless
Sure.
was a great boon. And it helped me to explain myself to other people and therefore fit in. And so that chapter really spoke to me.
I love that. Okay, so if you were to define what kind of writer you think this book is for, you define it as a gentle book, gentle advice, but like what, in your mind, who's the ideal writer who right now, this is the book they should go pick up from the library?
Well, naturally poets.
Sure.
Because poets, in my mind, tend to fall in even when they're writing about current events, other things, they're more loose in their writing.
Mm-hmm.
And memoirists and essayists, I feel, would really benefit from this book because it gets you started writing about things.
Sure. You're almost starting your memoir draft with the prompts.
So, like, if you're an ongoing novelist or something like that, this might not be for you unless you're in a rough patch.
Sure.
And you need to take a break from that. This would be a good book for that, too.
Maybe more of a restorative read in that
Yes.
sense. Okay, I love that. Well, then let's go ahead and move on to The Book of Alchemy, A Creative Practice for an Inspired Life by Suleika Jawad. Jawad.
Yeah. This book is awesome and very inspirational. The author suffered from cancer.
Okay.
And felt she needed to make some changes in her life. And she created this plan for 100 days of creativity.
Okay.
And to re-spark her creativity. And then she went out and she asked 100 creative people to each write an essay and a prompt for this book. So there's 100 days worth of creative prompts. It'll take you a little over 3 months to finish this book. And you read one essay and then you do the prompt. And they're on things like love or grief, or they're just general topics. And there are 10 essays per topic.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And so they might be physical artists, they might be musicians, they might be essayists or poets, fiction writers. George Sanders is in here, and he might not have understood the assignment because his essay is radically different than everybody else's.
Interesting. Was his prompt different than everyone else's as well?
Yes, very much so.
No, maybe part of creativity is shaking it up a little bit.
I think he had his teacher hat on.
Sure.
And so, Yeah, it's a fantastic book. If this doesn't shake you out of your doldrums, none of these books will.
Is it all writing prompts, or are they like for the physical artists or the musicians? Like, are there other kinds of artistic creation prompts?
Some of them are distinct. Write this or go out and take photos of that.
Got it. Okay,
something.
great. So there's also other kinds of creation prompts. I got it.
But all of them can be interpreted to whatever it is your
Sure.
area of expertise is.
I love that. Okay. So was there one that stood out to you for this one? A prompt, an essay?
I can't say.
Okay. I mean, there's 100, so fair enough.
100, and I did them all.
Oh, wow. Did you do it once a day for 100 days?
No, I did not.
Okay.
There were breaks in between where I was traveling or whatever, and I just couldn't do it. So it took me longer than a little over 3 months to do this book. But it was totally worth it.
Great. That's awesome. So you kind of already said that this is maybe for somebody who like needs to get out of a rut, who just needs to re-explore their boundaries, their interests. Any other kinds of writers you think that this book in particular would be great for?
No, but I think it's great for all creative people. So whether you're a songwriter or you're
A fine artist, a photographer.
fine artist, yep, there's something for everybody in here. And also, if you're intimidated by the idea of doing something for 100 days, just get the book. And whenever you feel the urge, pick it up and do one.
Maybe once a week.
Once a week. Don't do it in order. Just do
Sure.
what calls to you or pick one out of random.
Roll a D20 and just, pick a chapter based on that
That's right.
for all you D&D heads. All right, cool. No, that sounds really... All right, I'm putting it together. Have you done this is off topic. Have you done the Artist's Way? Or yeah, that's what it's
Yes,
called, the
I have
Artist's Way?
Yep, I have.
Would you compare it in any way to that, or is that kind of a more distinct process?
It's a more distinct process, but I would say it has the same, and again, I'm going to use the word gentle feeling
Okay.
of these. It's not like somebody is demanding you
Right.
do something
There's no taskmaster like...
or saying this is how you have to interpret this,
Sure.
So
Less prescriptive, maybe. Okay, cool. Very cool. So let's move on to The Wonder Paradox, Embracing the Weirdness of Existence in the Poetry of Our Lives by Jennifer Michael Hecht.
yes. And I found this book in the philosophy section.
I was going to say, this one definitely sounds more like philosophy than some of the other ones, even with the poetry in the title.
She's the author of the best-selling book, Doubt.
Oh, about the Catholic Church, that doubt?
Yes, about how we have lost organized religion
Sure.
in our lives, and that in some ways that's not a good thing. And so I don't think this book, The Wonder Paradox, should be in the philosophy section. I mean, it's tangential to what she was writing about, but what she has here is using poetry or other writings to replace organized religion in those lives that have that void.
Okay.
So her process is creating your own prayer book, but with poetry.
Interesting. To like recreate the ritual, to recreate... Okay.
Yes. And so I don't know. I'm a Catholic. I don't know other religions, what they all necessarily do.
Mm-hmm.
But in Catholicism, we have these little prayer books that you get. People give them to you as gifts or whatever. And they have a prayer for on grieving.
Sure.
For, childbirth, for
Right.
what, and
Important milestones where prayer is part of the process.
yes. And so she suggests creating your own prayer book and including a few poems.
And I assume she suggests some poems?
Yes, she does. And you can either take the ones that she suggests or you can find your own.
Okay.
And she suggests doing it in a very creative way. Get yourself a nice book, decorate it.
Mm-hmm.
Decorate the pages, decorate the margins, add photos. And
It's like bullet journaling, but
Yes.
for making a ritualistic poetry book of life stuff.
yes.
Okay.
And she also recommends, when you go to read those in those situations, make a ritual out of that.
Okay.
Maybe you decide that whenever you're going to read a poem about, healing or something, you're going to light a candle.
Sure.
Or, maybe you're going to have poems of gratitude that you're going to read at like potlucks or something, and creating a ritual around that. Maybe everybody holds hands or whatever.
Oh, sure.
So it's not creative in the way of,
Producing your own work.
yep, you're
Necessarily.
going to write some poems. But actually, when I did do this, I wrote some of my own poems too. So I would put a poem that I found and one that I wrote for
love
each
that.
topic.
That would make a great gift. Even if they didn't know what the context was, that sounds really lovely. I love
Someday my daughter's going to find it and find out just how crazy her mom was.
that. I think that's what all parents should hope to put on their children is someday you're going to know. You're going to know how weird it is. I love that. Okay, cool. So obviously this is a little bit different. It's more philosophy than craft or production. But you mentioned that this is probably good for somebody who like rituals are really important to. Perhaps there is a void in their life where ritual used to be, or a different version of a ritual used to be. Any other people that you think like this is who should be reading this book right now?
Again, I think somebody who has a hole in their life, either because they are not feeling very creative right now,
Sure.
or because they don't have a process, this would be a really good book for them.
That's a good thought is process. Because I do think that, I talk to writers all the time, and something that seems to be pretty consistent amongst them is, we all have complicated lives. We have jobs, we have families, we have so much going on. And so to create a process that's just for us, that's just for reclaiming time for us to be creative, to like let that side of ourselves flourish, can be really challenging. And this seems like a really fun, almost like entry point back to a routine. Like creating this forces you to sort of set aside time for your schedule, and then once you've created it, now you've sort of built this into your life. That seems like a cool option.
It does. And I find myself actually going back to the book that I put together. So, when those
Awesome.
times happen in my life now, I go back to those poems and I read them.
I love that. That's very, very cool. I feel like I remember us talking about this book now. I was like, oh yes. I had a vision in my head of like a zine making opportunity, and like this sounds very cool. I love this. I think that's very cool. Thank you for teaching us about this. All right, so the final book in the official article that you wrote is Life in 5 Senses: How Exploring the Senses Got Me Out of My Head and Into the World by Gretchen Rubin.
This book really resonated with me. I have actually read other books by her before. She wrote like The Happiness Project.
Sure. Okay.
Which
a lot
was
of nonfiction then.
Huge bestseller, yes. But this one really resonated with me because the author found out that she has an eye condition and she could lose her eyesight.
Oof.
And I have macular dystrophy and I am losing my eyesight. So I felt a kinship with her, and I felt a closeness with her sudden realization that she has been so busy in her life that she has forgotten to see things. And so she started out with just the whole idea of, I'm going to make time, I'm going to figure out how to see more. But then she realized she was missing all of her senses in her busy life. So she started talking to experts and psychologists and scientists and various creative people to figure out how to use your senses better. So it's divided up by each sense.
Sure.
And it has exercises and activities to do to improve, your recollection or your being present in the moment.
Sure.
And experiencing things and then remembering them. This would be super helpful to a writer.
I can imagine. I'm already thinking like if you're in an editing process, because I think, for a lot of us, the first draft of anything is kind of just, does this idea have legs? Is the structure right? But then the revision process is about like deepening the world building, even in poetry, right? Is finding a more visual way or a more aesthetically pleasing way to say or sound out something. And so that seems like a great practice to do when you're like, all right, I have the story. Now how do I make the story good? How do I make the story full and complete?
I find that in our world, if you read enough philosophy, if you read enough self-help, there are certain things that I call like universal wisdom.
Okay.
And one of those is experiencing the moment. You hear it over and over and over again. And this book really forces you into the moment.
Sure. Can you remember any of the prompts from this one?
There were like tasting ones where you had to like have a bunch of fruits and you'd have to taste this one and taste that one and just really experience it.
Sure.
Which I don't think about taste a lot. So I rarely include it in my poems, but I found that around the time that I was reading that chapter, suddenly there were tastes in my poems. So I was paying attention.
That's really cool. No, I love that. You're really selling me on these books, Lisa.
Thank you.
You should be getting affiliate money for these because
I love books. You know how some people have a special interest and they have lots and lots of books on, say, horses or something like that. I just love books. I will give any book a read. And once I start it, I will finish it because you never know, even if it's awful, somewhere towards the end, there's going to be something redeeming because somebody wrote that book. And I love books and I love talking about books.
Yeah, that hasn't come across yet, but I'm glad you said it just directly for us. It's funny. You're describing books that maybe you don't love, but you want to finish anyways. Seems very in collaboration with this book that you just described, up being in the moment, because it's not about like you have a great sensation every single time. It's like, what sensation am I having? What does that teach me? How can discomfort, like you were talking about with one of the earlier books, be telling and be revealing of something?
That's true.
Sitting with it, just appreciating it rather than just being like, and next, moving on. The calories are intaked. I have no other response to this experience that I just had.
One of the things, if I read a book that I don't like, I learn why I don't like it.
Sure. Yeah, I had that experience recently, actually. And I have that experience a lot with things that I'm like, objectively, I know that this is good. I did not have fun. I did not enjoy my time doing this. But I also respect and understand what other people get out of this. And that is informative, both in my own taste and my ability to, externalize it to other people, as well as being able to appreciate, okay, this wasn't for me, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it wasn't for me. And I can see where a different kind of person would get something out of this. And I think that's also part of the creative process, right? Is your taste isn't infallible. Your taste is not universal. So what is it about these other things that people find so special that you don't? But what can you learn about them and the world around you by opening your mind a little bit?
True. And even if I can't find anything redeeming, I can still find language.
Sure.
You have no idea how much, this phrase or that phrase you can pull out of a book and save it, and then it's just the right line for a poem. You have that in everyday life. In the car, I was driving over, and I heard content mercenaries. Okay. And I thought, oh, I love that. And I actually have the exact poem that's going to fit into. And so, language is everywhere, but especially in a bad book.
I love that. Actually, speaking of things we were listening to on the way here, so I was listening to actually a book podcast, a romance novel podcast that I listen to a lot, and they were using the phrase "books that blooded us" as like a catch-all phrase for like books that were foundational in somebody's taste, in somebody's like experience of the literary world. And I've been using that phrase a lot recently because of this podcast, because I think like, what are the books that blooded me? And like what books are still out there for me to discover that will blood me in a new way, of a way I experience the five senses and the way that I experience living in the moment. So That's my contribution to the discovery of phrases. So those are the four books that are covered in Lisa's amazing article. Definitely, once again, check out the link to the full article in the podcast description. However, Lisa was kind enough, because she loves books so much, to bring in a couple of extra ones. And so I'm curious why these are the three other ones that you brought in. I'd love to hear about them.
Okay, the first one is The Imagination Muscle, and it's by Albert Reed.
Okay.
The subtitle is Where Good Ideas Come From and How to Have More of Them.
And I see this is a very heavily annotated book.
Yes, it's tabbed all the way down the sides, because I facilitate workshops for the Mesa County Public Library. I do poetry night at the library. And
when is that?
The second Wednesday of every month, 6 to 7:45 p.m. in the Mesa Room. Everyone is welcome.
Great.
Central Library.
At the Central Library.
Yes. And I also facilitate workshops for the Grand Junction VA, so we have a creative writing program. And I use a lot of the suggestions in this book. I use a lot of quotes from this book in my teaching. So this is an awesome. It's great for learning how to open up your imagination, how to flex that muscle, imagination muscle, but also how to find time in your life to make this a practice.
Yeah, once again, talking about routine, talking about giving yourself permission to spend time in your creative muscle building.
Yes.
If you're going to work out your arms, if it's leg day, it should also be brain day.
Yes, it should. Every day should be brain day. You should devote a little time every day to professional development.
I like that. I do think that is a practice that more of us should be getting into, myself included. So this one maybe is a little bit more obvious, but who's this book for? What kind of writer should be approaching this one next?
Well, any writer, really. Sure. But I would say it's super important for a beginning writer. You know, okay. Once you've got a couple books out, you have a process.
Sure.
And if it's working for you, great. But if you're starting out, I feel that I see a lot of writers floundering around trying to figure out where to get their ideas, how to get started on them. This is a great place to start.
Great. I love that. Okay. Next up, Benny the Blue Whale, right?
Yes. I love this book.
I feel like you and I have talked about this book several times now, and I'm still waiting for it to come off library hold for me. So this is Benny the Blue Whale by who?
Andy Stanton versus ChatGPT.
Okay.
So they're both in here.
Sure.
And the subtitle is A Descent into Story, Language, and the Madness of ChatGPT.
Great.
And Andy Stanton is a children's book author. And his friend suggested he try playing around with ChatGPT. And so he did. And his goal was to convince ChatGPT to help him write a story about a blue whale with a tiny penis.
Okay.
And that's not just to be vulgar.
Sure.
It's because ChatGPT has like a filter on it, and it's not allowed to talk about that. And
unless you hack. I was watching a video on the way over, or before we got here, about how there's a lot of ways around that.
Yes, and he had to find them. He had
Sure.
to find ways to trick ChatGPT into writing about this topic. So there wasn't anything vulgar about it at all in the book. It's just the fact that that word was used, and he had to convince ChatGPT to use it. And it's really interesting, this book. I don't want to give it away.
But you described it to me before as like it's a conversation between this writer and ChatGPT, and thinking about like what this technology means, how it responds, and what that tells us about technology and the world. Is that?
Yes. It's basically set up where the conversations between the author and ChatGPT are on one portion of the page, and you can see very clearly where the author, his questions to ChatGPT are. You can see ChatGPT's responses. Then off to the side, like on a side note, the author is making direct comments about what ChatGPT is replying or why he had to ask ChatGPT that way.
So contextualizing the conversation a little bit.
Yes, and then there are also footnotes where the author is reflecting about this technology and whether or not it's good for us.
Okay, very cool. So this one, obviously, this just sounds like an interesting nonfiction book that I want to read. But from the perspective of this conversation about creativity practice and routine building, like who do you think this book is for as a writer?
Well, I would suggest it to any writer who's planning on trying to use ChatGPT. But really, anybody could benefit from this book because we are suddenly surrounded by AI.
Yeah.
And is it good for us?
I have my opinion.
I have my opinion too.
But I think that this is a really interesting way to explore that kind of like the weirdness of our current time with technology.
It is. And the author, I have a fondness for British nonfiction because they tend to have a dry sense of humor.
Sure.
And the author is got this same dry sense of humor as he goes about relating his interactions with ChatGPT. And it's a weird read because you're constantly flipping between side notes and footnotes and so it takes longer based on that, but you don't want to put it down.
Mm-hmm. Was this one of your slot 2 books, or where did this book fall in your day?
This is a slot 2 book because he really does in the footnotes actually have craft
discussions.
Yes, in the footnotes he actually has craft discussions.
Okay.
And this is professional development.
Okay, fair enough. That's very cool. Okay, and final book. Drum roll, please.
The final book I picked was Salman Rushdie's Languages of Truth. This is not a new book. This has been out for a while, but I only read it recently.
Okay.
Because I have stacks of books to be read all over my house. I love Salman Rushdie because of the language and the way he uses it. This is a series of essays from 2003 to 2020.
Okay.
And basically, it's about our responsibilities as a writer and writing to the times. And so I was reading another book by Ursula K. Le Guin this morning where she was complaining that writers preach too much. But this is the converse of that. Salman Rushdie is saying as writers, we have a responsibility to address certain topics. And that's what all these essays are about, is either about him addressing a certain topic or other writers around him addressing a certain topic relating to current events, the world. So it's his beautiful language, the same beautiful language he uses in his books, his novels, but in this case, it's turned towards a higher calling?
Sure, a meditation on language.
Yep, a meditation on and writing.
Sure. So who's this for?
Oh, this book is for book lovers.
Okay.
Besides the beautiful language, I guess it could be for writers too. I mean, because he is talking about the responsibility of the writer, but I feel more he's talking about as readers, we have a responsibility to choose books that are good.
Sure. Okay, very interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. I just want to shout out 2 books in this conversation about like books that have changed my relationship with writing and storytelling. Story Genius by Lisa Crone. Have you read that one?
No, I have not.
It's a great, definitely more craft book, but she uses like psychology and brain science to kind of uncrack storytelling and structure and thinking about approaching things a little bit differently. It's definitely more for fiction writers. So I that's not necessarily always your beat, but I have found it really nice because it's very grounded in character. And I'm very much a character writer. Whether I'm writing poetry or novels, I'm always about the people. And so this is definitely a book that starts and ends with people. The plot can only come out of people's decisions. And I find that to be a much more helpful way of exploring the process of ideating and the process of making decisions about what happens next is like, well, what would this person do next? And what do we know about them that informs that decision? That process of thinking has been very helpful for me personally. So I'm actually very slowly reading that myself, not not doing it all at once, because it can feel like school in a way that feels bad, where it's like, it's assignment time if you just read the whole thing. And I'm like, but I want to read a fun book. So I have found that reading like a chapter or two at a time is a better pacing for me, because then I can go sit with it. I can do the prompts, at the end of the chapters. I can think more deeply about it versus just like, all right, I've learned it. Now start applying it. It's a lot of pressure that doesn't feel good when you're reading otherwise. And then the other one, I haven't read this in a while, I will say, was On Writing by Stephen King. And I mean, listen, Stephen King is Stephen King. But I read this book when I was in 8th grade for the first time. And it was really foundational for me. It was a book that blooded me, as it were. Stephen King would love that language, I bet. Not because I don't think I've ever read a Stephen King book other than On Writing, to be honest. Not really a horror person, but what was revelatory for me at the time was early in the book, he talks about teachers who would tell him, like, why are you writing these, silly, pulpy things? Like, you're a great writer. You should be writing great things. And part of this book was very much him kind of unpacking, like, what does it mean to write great things? Like, why is genre not a part of that? Why is fun not put up next to, like, literary? Like, why is what I'm doing not literary? What do you mean? Because I know what this kind of writing has done for me personally, so why wouldn't I want to contribute to this? And that was big for me because, certainly all young writers, I imagine, go through the phase of like, everything I write is dark and depressing because that's the real world. Like, I have to write something important. I have to write the next great American novel, when really, like, that's not necessarily what all of us are doing. Certainly not what I do. I can't stay serious for that long. And this was a book that showed me that that was okay, that it validated that, like, all kinds of art can be important if you take them seriously and are thoughtful about them. And just because you're writing in a genre that culturally is looked down upon, for me, that's romance, doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't important and can't have value in your life and readers' lives. So that's and there's definitely craft stuff in On Writing, but that was really what stuck with me, was this author talking about, like, his journey to accepting that he likes writing horror. He likes writing a very specific genre, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it has added a lot to his life and to the lives around him to give himself a break about it.
I love that book. I use it when I'm teaching because he's the one who I quote as saying, you have to understand the rules in order to break them.
100%.
And so when we're talking grammar, and all the veterans' eyes are rolling back in their heads, and I'm like, you have to understand the rules in order to be able to break them.
Sure. Yeah, he was great. I probably should read one of his books at one point, even though that's not the style I like. But it's always stuck with me, the way he just loves writing. He loves it. He loves telling stories. He loves coming up with freaky little situations, and you can feel that, because sometimes you'll read a creativity book or a craft book where, like, it feels very staid. It feels very like, you will do this and you will be good, and there's an objective truth to the way that writing works, and it can feel stifling. And On Writing always made me feel expansive, and I feel like that's what you've presented us today, is books that make you feel expansive and hopefully make other readers feel expansive rather than hemmed in.
Yes, I read a lot of books on craft as well, but these books are just inspiration. There are sometimes when you spend time within a particular writer, it's just inspiring. And so spending time with Salman Rushdie or spending time with Andy Stanton and ChatGPT makes me walk away wanting to write.
I love that. Yeah, we were talking earlier about kind of the distinction between, like, creativity books and craft books. And I do think that they need to be in conversation with one another, because you can know all the craft in the world, but if you don't have anything to say, then where are those lessons going? So I just want to thank you once again for sharing this with us, for recommending these great books and chatting with me about creativity and craft. So we've mentioned it a little bit in the podcast, but this is your time for plugs. Where can people find you and what you're up to? Where can people find the stuff you're up to in the Valley?
Okay. If you're a veteran interested in creative writing, contact Lindsay and Lexi in the Recreation Therapy Department at the VA. We have a an 18-week class that we run every year, starting in January, ending in June. And it has 4 weeks of poetry, 4 weeks of personal narrative, 4 weeks of short story, and 4 weeks of script writing, plus 2 weeks to get everything pulled together, and then we put out a journal. So we have an annual journal that comes out, which is called the High Desert Cadence.
Okay.
You should start seeing our next volume, Around the Valley, in June.
Which I believe is around when this episode goes out. So you start looking around. That's called the High Desert Cadence, you
The
said?
High Desert Cadence, and it will be volume 6.
Okay. And where might that be available?
You can find it in the VA or at Colorado One Source, but what happens is they start trickling out into the community, and you start seeing them in doctors' offices, at the library, just sitting around places. Pick one up.
Okay, great. And also, once again, the plug for Wednesday Poetry Nights.
Poetry Night at the library is the second Wednesday of every month from 6 to 7:45 p.m. at the Mesa Room in the Central Library in Grand Junction. Everyone is welcome.
And finally, for you personally, where can people find you, your wonderful work, and the stuff that you've got personally going on?
I've been published a lot of places, a lot of journals. I prefer to be published in a print journal if I can, rather than being online. But I am online. I don't have my own book out yet.
Okay.
I can't seem to force myself to sit down and write enough poems on one topic to make a book.
Fair enough. Do you have like a website or social media, anywhere that you want people to follow you, or just show up to Poetry Night?
Just show up to Poetry Night or any of the readings around town. I feel like I represent Poetry Night at the library, so I go to all of those.
Sure.
And you can contact me there, and I can put you in touch with people who can help you get into the VA class or come to Poetry Night.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for spending this time with us, Lisa. This has been High Desert Voices. I've been Brie Castellini, and we'll catch you next time.
High Desert Voices is the official podcast of the Western Colorado Writers Forum, a nonprofit organization based in Grand Junction, Colorado. The forum's mission is to foster a rich and diverse writing community on Colorado's western slope that invites participation from diverse cultures, customs, and life experiences. The forum hosts Writers' Night presentations at the Grand Junction Center for the Arts on the first Tuesday of every month, where local and national writers give presentations on their craft. Sign up for the forum's free newsletter and listen to all our podcast episodes for free at westerncoloradowriters.org.